Welcome, everybody. We are with Nate and Steve again, talking the MSP growth kit, all things sales from a couple of managers who have been there, done that, helped grow sales staffs with MSPs. Nate and Steve, welcome. Feels like way more than a month to me since we did our last one, but I think it's been about a month. So we're following up on our conversation that we started last time on target customer profiles. Or if you hear us using industry vernacular, you may just hear us say TCP, which is just an acronym for target client profile or target customer profile, depending on what you want for a C. But I would start this off with that what we to summarize what we talked about last time is there's a progression from going of the like street fight, anything for a buck business mentality, where if somebody's willing to write you a check, you're willing to do it, all the way through what you learn as you grow, which is really the concept that you don't really have a strategy until what you're going to say no to, and a lot of that is which clients are you going to say no to, who are you going to let in, because you're trying to build a factory that delivers service, right? If I kind of borrow some of the service leadership vernacular in their approach, but I'm just going to start with this right off the bat. If I asked you, and Nate, I'll start with you, and then we'll come to Steve. Right now, if I asked you, I'm a new salesperson or I'm a customer, like who's your target customer profile, Nate?
Yeah, and so we do have this pretty well defined, and it's interesting. We have it defined by size, so 15 employees, kind of at the low end, to 500 at the high end is our target. And then we talk about within a 45-mile radius of one of our physical offices, and so like basically, so we can drive there within an hour is roughly kind of our target. And then we do have some psychographic profiles that are, someone that's we call them pragmatic Page or conservative Carl, and there's a book that you can read called Crossing the Chasm. Great book, and it talks about technology, bell curves, and mindsets, and so that helped us kind of define the psychographic. But the other thing, Brad, that you made me think of that we didn't talk about as we were prepping is that we also say who not to sell to from a standpoint of what verticals. Like, we have learned we're not good. Most of our we're not great at serving the educational space. We're not great at the restaurant space, retail space. We typically don't work with government entities because we don't want to deal with the red tape. Like, we have a couple that we work with, but it's mainly because we're referred into them, but we don't target them.
Right.
So that's kind of the stuff that we found, is that where do we focus our energy, and also then who, based on the way we built our business and services, do we typically not work well with? And that's kind of by industry. We've kind of ruled some of those out.
Yeah. All right, it's a good overview. Steve, what's yours? What's next?
Yeah, so
target customer profile.
I had to pull up the document because we do have it documented, and really it follows around just what Nate was. Ours is a little bit smaller. We're a little more rural. We kind of target 10 to 100 seats with a minimum of 5. They have a dedicated IT budget. We do have some verticals. We like regulated industries, financial, healthcare, that kind of stuff. Education, solid for us. Professional services, small, medium businesses. We typically like no or limited IT internal type people. We had a red flag section, so that was a little bit, Nate didn't really talk about that. Well, he sort of did there, some things that are red flags. Things that we put down red flags: no IT budgets. That's kind of a red flag. If they don't have any kind of active directory or anything, maybe they just don't know better, but if they've avoided that stuff. If they had Windows home machines, that's always a real big red flag. If they have old wiring and infrastructure, and we put on here like government and hospitality love to do that. So that aligned with what Nate said. And then third-party applications, like particularly we do not do POSs. And so we kind of identified that's a red flag, that maybe their POS provider should be their IT provider, not us, that kind of stuff.
All right, so I'm going to break our conversation up into 2 chunks. The first one, I would call it policing, and the second one, I would call it like evolving, right? Because these things obviously evolve, right? They're set in stone until they're not. Right? Like that's how that goes. So Steve, I'll start with you going to policing, because you took the categories that Nate built. Like, Nate, when you described yours, there was a size, there was a geographic component, and there was the psychographic component that you talked about. And then Steve, you said, yep, we got all those. And then you rattled off about 10 exceptions that are come from experience, right? Like, you know, the reasons why those are bad deals and we're just going to stay away from them. So Steve, talk about how do you, what does it actually look like at Next Tech from either from a, like, it could be from lead generation through a sales rep going out and having a conversation with somebody. Is it formal? Is it informal? Like, where's your gates? How do you police your target customer profile in that process?
Yeah, so like the first red flag I gave was no IT budget, right? So we actually, one of the qualifiers we have on the sales before it can move through our pipeline is there has to be a budget for this project or for this MRR, right? And of course, customers hate to give you their budget because they think that you're going to somehow like, hose them over with, getting to that budget number, which of course is not what we're doing. What we want to do is make sure there's alignment with, we know we're about $279 a user a month. Like, that's our number. We know and so if their budget is $100, there's no reason for us to have this conversation going further. Now, look, let's just say they go, that's what I'm spending today. Part of what we need to do is quantify, okay, you say you're spending that today. Let's have that conversation. Meaning, when you talk about $100 a month, that includes your equipment, not including your equipment, including your licensing, like Office 365. Does that include your cybersecurity platform? When you say you're spending $100 a month, what are you telling me?
Yeah,
because most of our customers have no idea what they're actually spending. And when we actually like line out, whether it be annual contracts that they pay up a lump sum, or they pay monthly for some kind of service, or they're doing break fix with somebody that they're getting monthly, or they're just buying stuff randomly, by the time you add it up, I mean, I'm guessing Nate would agree with me that most of our customers are paying this anyway. Or if they're not in our target customer profile. Like, they either are having good IT and there's a reason, or they're not and they're having bad IT. But then again, the conversation would be, if you're having bad IT and you're expecting to pay what you have today, why would you think that the world's going to be different? It's not. So I don't know if I answered that question for you, Brad, but that's just an example, right?
You did. And a lot of these things, I think, like it's there's two or three concepts that sort of get mixed together, and it's really the art and science of kind of how do you land on the right set of customers in the midst of that. What I mean is, like, you gave a pretty, I'm assuming you have like a checklist of either formal or informal things. Like, when a sales rep goes out and talks to somebody, you better come back with like a budget and a timeline, or like, and who's the decision maker, right? Like, you probably have these super quantifiable things that are either yes or no, that until you start having the conversation, then you'll weed those customers in or out, right? Like, that's how that works. But what about like, what was one of your exceptions again? Like, did you say point of sale was in or out, right? Did you say
out,
okay. Yeah. So where does that get filtered out? Is that in the marketing lead before it gets to the salesperson, if at all possible? Like, where does that stuff happen?
Typically, so let's talk about that sales process. So let's just say it was a marketing lead, to your point. It came in, it goes to a salesperson that says, hey, we got ABC retail clothing shop that wants to talk to you about, IT services. The salesperson will pick up the phone, call said lead, and have a quick conversation, because it probably depends on how they're coming to the table. If they said, I just had a major cybersecurity incident and I don't want it to happen again, and I see the value in my back-end systems be protected, we might have that conversation. If they go, my current POS dealer is out of business and I want a new POS, like, we would give a referral to another POS vendor that we kind of like in the local market and say, have a nice day. So it'd be filtered out kind of in that initial, and I'm going to say almost like somewhere between marketing qualified lead and sales qualified. It's just that, like, don't waste our time filter right there between those two, because we always get people that fill out our online forms saying, I'm interested, and then you make that phone call and they're in Kentucky or something, and we have no interest, like Nate said, geography, like, feels fishy. I don't know.
All right, I'm gonna come to Steve one more time, and then Nate, I'm gonna ask you sort of the same series of questions on how you guys handle this. But where if I look at the top of the funnel of everything that kind of comes in for opportunities, and then the bottom of the funnel, which if they fall through the funnel, they become a part of your client base, and hopefully they fit your target customer profile, right? Like that's this process. Um, uh, are there deliberate, is there a catch-all, like, or maybe another way of wording it would be, when's the last time you realized you took on a client that you shouldn't have, and how did they slip through the cracks?
It's been a while. Like I'm sure there's ones that exist out there. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Probably lack of training is where it's happening. We've got some green folks, as we always do at that level, that of course, as we apply more and more quota type pressure, they start trying to jam more into what is not an opportunity.
Of course. Right.
So I would say probably at that point, my more tenured staff that's been here more than a year, I can't think of a time they come to us and said, but I really want to, like all the time.
Yeah.
Right. But most of the time not. Maybe the other piece of this would be our technical team, meaning, we'll have a technician that gets called to go do some break fix work, and he thinks this is a huge opportunity for something and really wants to do the work, really likes the client, and we're just going, look, this isn't a good fit. The answer is no. And we're an ISP and a telco and some of these other things so it kind of funnels into that piece of our business.
Right. Yeah. All right. Okay, Nate, how about you? Like where do these things get filtered out? What are your processes like to police this so that the top of the funnel and the bottom of the funnel are, sized right,
Yeah, I would say that at the top part of the funnel, I mean, we do try and handle, like when a marketing lead comes in, we do try and filter that prior to getting it over to the sales team, because we really want our sales team to be excited about those. So we have a qualifier that like greater than 60% of MQLs that get handed to the sales team convert to SQLs. So it's kind of like a quality metric that we balance with. So there is some qualification that happens there, but sometimes that we don't get. All our leads aren't just from marketing. Our sales team generates most of their own leads, right? A lot of their own leads. So I think there is. So we have some qualifiers that we talk about before we do like the assessment phase of our process, when we have some conversations about that. And one of them is we get the right person in the room. Like, is the decision maker part of the process? Like, in making sure that's there, because that is a huge red flag. One of the other things that we ask is, has the decision maker come to our office during the sales process yet? If they haven't come to our office, again, that's not always if you don't like your office and you don't think that's a strategic advantage, then I wouldn't have that as a qualifier. But for us, it's something that it demonstrates that without them having to spend money, it demonstrates that they're serious about it, they're willing to spend their time on it, and they've at least taken the time to invest and get to know us a little bit better. Because if we're talking about a partnership, this is a two-way street. It's not just like a vendor transactional thing. So if we find that those two things aren't present, then the other one is budgetary alignment. We have a high level budget range that we talk about. And if we have some alignment there, then we can move forward in the assessment process. Otherwise, we don't even move forward with the assessment process, basically.
And by the way,
they're not going to be a fit.
I would love to add, I am super jealous of that office visit. I think that is a huge qualifier. Unfortunately, our geography just doesn't lend us, but I think that is a phenomenal tool, and I've heard that used successful inside of our peer groups where other companies, and I think people give up on that too early because they go, well, it's a lot of work. It is. But
it is.
But from a client standpoint, this is a lot of work to invest in you too. So I think it's phenomenal, and I've experienced it. So it is a phenomenal tour.
Yeah, a little bit of a rabbit trail. But Nate, are you still doing that even post-COVID, where we can have a hybrid work environment? I'm assuming you guys are back, where you're not bringing them to an empty office to say 5 years ago, this is where we had a bunch of people sitting.
No, yeah, we believe strongly in the office collaboration, and the short version of that is that, like, look, a big part of our culture is mentorship, and so we want the level 1s and level 2s to be mentored by our level 3s and level 4s, and that's on the sales side and on the technical side. And the problem is, so in theory, level 3s and 4s should be able to work from home, but then level 3s and 4s aren't around to mentor the level 1s and level 2s,
Right.
and so we really want people together so that we can work together and learn from each other and coach each other on a daily basis. And so, we are definitely in the office. We were doing it through COVID, as long as we were being safe and, all those kind of things. But and it's really, I mean, the challenge of, and it's less and less so now, but the challenge of our industry is that people, there's still people that work literally out of their car or their trunk or their garage, right? That are in our industry, and not that those are incompetent people. It has nothing to do with it. They're typically very highly competent individuals. It's just the power and the value of a team, I believe, far outweighs anything that an individual can do, and the risk that we mitigate by not relying on one person or maybe one or two people. And so getting them to our office is really trying to demonstrate, like, if you're looking for that, like, because it's also a fit from the client perspective, right? So, like, we are looking for clients who want what we are bringing to the table. And if what we're bringing to the table, including our office and our team and our structure and our processes and all that, isn't the right fit for you, that's fine. Let's just stop talking now then, right? And so if they're not interested in that, move on.
Yeah. So Nate, with that concept, going back to your term of, like, the psychographic part of your profile, how do you train your sales reps, or where's the gate? What's the series of questions that sort of provide that filter for you guys?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, part of it on one side is that if someone's trying to move too fast, like if they're like, no, I don't want to, don't bother, like, doing any assessment or looking at anything, just do it, move forward. Like, let's go, like, let's do it tomorrow. And if you can't move fast enough, they're like, hey, I need a tech out here tomorrow to fix this thing that's broken. Like, that is a bleeding edge kind of thing, typically, that those people typically don't want to take the time to have a conversation. Make sure you set a plan and a goal. They're moving so fast, and they're likely to not pay you, because it's just the way we found that those people oftentimes like to operate. So there's a little bit of that. There's also the DIYers, like, I'm going to go down to the local computer shop and buy a new computer, and I put them together myself. That sounds great. You should keep doing that, because that's not what we're going to do. So, like, I think it's kind of on either side of the equation, but in the middle of that bell curve for us, the key, one of the things that we did years ago, to accelerate our sales process, but also to kind of get this philosophical alignment. And this might happen not typically on that phone call that Steve was talking about. We do some qualifiers on the phone call, but in a first meeting, when you're sitting face to face with someone, sometimes it's virtual today, but we try and make it face to face if at all possible. We might say something like this, like, look, Mr. and Mrs. Prospect, we have a proven IT strategy that we know delivers consistent, reliable results for our clients. We're not saying it's the best strategy. We're not saying it's the only strategy that's out there. It's just the one that we've built our business around, that we know delivers results for you. Part of it is that we need you to make investments into your infrastructure in alignment with the standards that we know our team can deliver for you. And so that means, like, certain products, it doesn't really, like, and keeping your stuff less than 5 years old. At a high level, that's what it is. So if you're game for making those kind of investments proactively in your business and not waiting for things to break and die, you know what? We could be a really great partner for you. If not, let's stop talking right now. So it's very much a like, lean back conversation. Like, look, we're okay if it's not the right fit. And usually that means the client that we're looking for leans in. They're like, oh, that sounds great to me. I would love to follow that plan. I don't want to build a plan on my own. So that's kind of the approach that we take, that tries to qualify the middle of the bell curve.
Brad, that last 30 seconds, if anybody learns anything from anything we've produced, that's it. Like, that is a success to business. This business is that if you're not having that conversation, you're going to fail. The client's going to fail. You're going to fail. That is a competitive advantage that we have in the market, and you have to believe that to your core. And I mean, I know Nate does. I know we do. But I'm going to take that even a step further. And I mentioned it earlier, but also we talked about it. Some of our other podcasts that we've done was the fact that, look, you've fired your previous provider because your service was bad or your technology bad or something was bad. To expect that you're just going to keep the same crap and have a better experience with somebody new is ridiculous. And you need to say that. because it's unrealistic. Like, I'm sorry I'm using the term crap, but crap is crap. And there's no magic that Nate has in his bag to turn that with pixie dust to make it a magically better experience. It is going to be a terrible experience. And so you have to believe, and we're so, I think our technicians, and I'm sorry I'm pointing fingers, Brad, you get to represent here, but they take pride in making 7-year-old equipment keep running. The problem is it's 7-year-old equipment. It needs to be upgraded. I recently talked to a end user at a medical place. They bought refurbished Dells. That's what they bought. And I don't want to suggest that refurbished cannot be okay. But the trackpad didn't work on her laptop, and she was a nurse, and she traveled around from patient room to enter data without. So now they gave her a corded mouse. Like, I don't know what the rooms look like. Like, come on. And so meanwhile, I don't know what
running it on her hand.
Yeah, like exactly, I don't know what a high-end nurse makes these days. But it's not $15 an hour, and we're using $15, and like this equipment couldn't cost you more than a couple bucks a day. Yet you got people that you're paying $40, $50, $100 an hour to use shit. We have to do better. We have to believe better, and it improves the entire experience. Sorry, a little
that's the other type of POS you don't work with, Steve. You don't work with pieces of
right. All right, we got just a couple minutes left, and I want to bring up one point, and then I want to ask a question. One of the things we didn't get to, but we talked about that's important, is you align your service offerings in your contract to kind of put guardrails up for the right target customer profile, right? So if you're out there, that's a bit of kind of the art and science of this. Offerings will get honed, and your contracts will be written to try to help kind of your company police. We have the right clients, right? But let's talk the last couple minutes. As a business, you grow, you change. What causes your target customer profile to evolve? Right? Like when you're first starting out, it's if somebody's willing to write a big paycheck, you're probably willing to change it. But you're making that decision. As you get bigger right now, Nate, I'll come to you first. What would cause you to change your target customer profile? How does that work?
Yes, Brad, I really appreciate this question. This is something that we've had to review recently, actually. So we stepped back several years ago, and we use EOS as an organization, and we've learned to kind of adjust it to how we've grown to operate. But one of the things we learned about EOS is that EOS isn't a strategy. EOS is an operational kind of plan and rhythm, and it presumes you have a strategy. And so years ago, we had a coach that helped us define our strategy, which included refining and honing our target customer profile. And then, and we as you asked earlier, and I answered, which is like the 15 to 500 within a 45-mile radius, those kind of things. But recently, as an example, we went through this exercise that is that still valid? Because a few things started happening. The pandemic happened, and people are now like more apt to be in different geographic locations. Like people literally physically moved. Their headquarters still might be within our area, but they may have moved to another state. One of the clients that came to us, the CEO was based here in the Twin Cities. Their CFO was in Utah. Their manufacturing plant was in Michigan. And Brad, by the way, your video and stuff's cutting out. If you saw the message from Stephanie. So anyway, the target. So we're sitting here saying, well, I mean, technically the headquarters is in the Twin Cities, but like we're servicing parts of this organization that are in other geographic areas, and we were doing that with other clients too. And we really tried to say, well, does that mean we don't work with companies that are outside of our geography? And I think so. Where we landed, by the way, was that no. We will work with them if we're intentional about it and saying, okay, so if we're bringing on a client, because we were like another one is in the financial services world, we were referred to a client in, I think in Michigan, and they had offices and they had offices in Ohio and Michigan, and nothing in the Twin Cities or nothing in Denver, the two areas where we operate today. And we basically were very intentional about just saying, all right, we can work with them, but let's make sure that when we're talking to the client that we are aware of, look, there's a geographical challenge. We can't physically drive there within an hour to help you solve a problem. We might have additional travel expenses that you should expect. Quarterly, we are gonna come on site and we're gonna bill you for it. Like, so there's extra things that we did. There's extra redundancy we wanted to prescribe and make sure was in their infrastructure so we could support it easier. So we didn't. So what this exercise, which I thought gets to your point. I know it's a little long-winded here, but we got about 5 or 6 more minutes. Is that we landed on keeping our target customer profile, and again, this is the key word was our target customer profile. Who are we targeting when we invest our sales and marketing efforts? Who are we targeting? And we are still targeting companies that are headquartered in those the 15 to 500, headquartered within a 45-mile radius. But we have existing clients that fit that bill and have locations around the country. And so if we're intentional about it and they come to us, which is how people have found us in different areas, find us on our YouTube channel or whatever, if long as we have all these philosophical alignment, we have these conversations, we're okay with working with them and we can be successful working with them. But it doesn't mean we're targeting the entire country.
Yeah.
We're still targeting our geographic. So that was an interesting mental exercise and strategic team conversation to feel, because our team was confused by this too. They're like, well, we don't work with people outside of our geography. I'm like, no. We don't target people outside of our geography. So that was really an evolution of our target client profile that was more of like a clarification than an evolution, if that makes sense.
Yeah, right. Speaking of that, how do you is there a formal exception handling? Is it just sort of a they're not necessarily in our target, but we'll make an exception?
Yeah.
Where is that decision made a lot of times?
Yeah, that decision is made on 2 levels. One is our solution engineer will chime in on that as far as if there's anything technical, and sometimes there's we encounter someone that's a total mess, and so we're like, look, eyes wide open, everybody. If we're going to take this on, it's going to be excuse my French, a shit show, and like we got to be intentional about that and be aware of it, but we're going to try and get them into the right place as quickly as possible. Like sometimes that's a decision that we have to collaborate on. The other decision, especially if we're going outside of our geography, typically goes to the general manager of one of our branches, where they're just trying to be intentional. We do some internal collaboration between the sales and the general manager and or the sales manager to be like, okay, is this a client we want to bring on? Have we had the right conversations? Have we put the exception management things in the contract? Like we might bill you extra for travel, like things like that we make sure, because the general manager, if we're in our model, is ultimately accountable to the P&L for the branch. And so thus, if there's costs associated with serving clients outside of the geography, but are associated with that branch, it's ultimately their accountability. So that's why we involve them.
Yeah, Steve, how do you evolve yours? And you're a obviously kind of your business. We don't get into a lot, but you mentioned you do cable, you do phones, you do a bunch of things that a lot of your average MSP doesn't do. So your target customer profile probably is a little more complicated.
Yeah, Brad, I've thought about this question. I'm going to take you a completely different direction, just because what Nate said is spot on. Recently, and when I say recently, the last 6 months to a year, it feels like I'm spending as much as 20% of my time in legal now. People reviewing our terms and conditions, they have purchasing agreement type stuff that requires us to sign to be one of their vendors. So we've put some quantifications on those, meaning if it's less than $10,000 or less than $1,000 a month on a 60-month deal, I'm not going to look at that. Or I'm going to charge them to do the legal, their own legal, essentially, right? Because, it takes months to sometimes dig through these contracts. And so literally I'm adding a fee to deal with legal. And so part of, I guess what I'm saying our strategy has been is kind of arming the salespeople to have that conversation, part of the qualifier, to say, do you have any purchasing agreements that need to be signed on your behalf, or any cybersecurity agreements or whatever it is? Because one of them we just had was hundreds of pages long. It had everything from asbestos remediation to, their how they'll pay us, which is outside of our standard. And so bottom line is, I'm not absolutely saying no. So I feel like the customer met our target customer profile. Because let's face it, if they have great, if they've spent this much time on this process, they're a highly processed company. They value company that take the compliancy very seriously, as we do. And so I guess what I'm saying is I don't want to just say no, but I've got to make it worth my time. And so that's where we're making these investments. And so I took this a completely different way for you, Brad, but I just kind of wanted to add that piece because it's getting more complex.
Yeah, right. I mean, I think we got the point of like this again, it's one of those things that your target customer profile is set until
Right.
it's not,
Yeah.
right? And then you look to change some of those things, or again, it's not just your target customer profile exclusively, it's the processes around kind of, are we going to do this, can we charge for this, and you got to kind of almost constantly reevaluate it, or at least periodically reevaluate it to make sure that you're serving your business well as you grow. Okay, we're about out of time, and you may have experienced some video challenges. I'm not sure what's happening. I've been told my video is kind of cutting in and out, but you can use the opportunity of video cutting in and out to smash the subscribe button. Smash it. We're gonna fix the video thing hopefully by our next video. But any final words on the growth kit or target customer profile? You got like 30 seconds each, Nate. I'm coming to you.
Yeah, so I think the growth kit, which is I think I don't know if Stephanie's showing on the screen now, but that's something that's available to anyone. You don't have to be a ConnectWise partner to download that. It is not a gated piece of content. Steve and I put some growth kit stuff together with Brad over the last couple of years, and so there's tons of things around templates and comp plans and processes and all that kind of stuff there. So we definitely recommend that. But relative to your question, Brad, I think as and to kind of to tag a little bit off of what Steve was saying, our industry is getting more complex, right? The way we have to work with insurance, the way we have to work with our vendors, the way we have to work with our clients, all those things need to be in somewhat harmony, and legal is getting more complex. And so I say that because I think the offerings that we are being expected, that I believe some of us are being expected today, and I think in the future we're going to be expected, like doing more consulting, doing maybe more 365 consulting or securities consulting outside of our managed services agreements. That is I think that's going to expose us at all as MSPs to companies that are outside of our geographies that are potentially, and again, that might already be your TCP, but for us, we've definitely seen that where there's companies that have found us through. They're looking specifically for some of the consulting offerings that we're bringing to the table for our existing clients, but they're like, well, I just need that piece. I don't need management. I don't need a managed services program, but I need that. And we're doing that to build our consulting practice, but we also know it's a feeder into our managed services practice. So we're intentionally changing for specific offerings, whether or not we'll take things on. And I think that's just an illustration of what, if you're trying to look to the future, and the phrase, I like to use a Gretzky phrase for you hockey fans, to skate to where the puck is going, that's, I think, where the puck is going. We believe that. And I think that's going to challenge our TCP and being intentional about those definitions in the coming years.
Yeah. Steve, any final thoughts?
Yeah, totally different answer. If you didn't hear it clearly, sometimes you have to say no to customers to grow. And essentially, it's like brakes on the car. You have brakes on the car so you can go faster around the corners. That sometimes doesn't make sense in my brain until I think about it. That's why race cars have brakes, so they can go faster. So saying no to customers is important. Saying no to those customers that don't meet your target profile. It's painful. I know you don't want to give up the revenue, but this is how you will find strength and grow.
Yeah. Good words. All right. Gentlemen, thank you. Stephanie in the background, thank you. We will be back next month with another edition. Again, subscribe if you like these things. Put stuff in the comments, and we will talk to you guys next month.